Hi, all. Welcome back to another episode of 10-Minute Strategy. I am here with my colleague and really good friend, Nate Berger. And we are here to talk about minimum viable products. You know, when I was running Stanford Innovation Center, we spent a lot of time helping companies or entrepreneurs with ideas to understand what a minimum viable product is. But Nate, why don't we take it to you? What does a minimum viable product mean for you as someone who builds them?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Peter. Great conversation today. MVPs are certainly buzzworthy. And to clarify, it's really MVPs could be for any industry. It could be for any kind of product. What we're talking about today is around what we know best, user experience, that's applications, that's software, websites, that sort of thing. So an MVP for a website or for an app, for example, is really the simplest version of your app, of your site that you can offer. And the goal with an MVP is to get into the hands of users as quickly as possible. Think in Agile. You want to get feedback. You want to understand how the users are interacting with what you've created. And you want to iterate. You want to come back with from the MVP with version 1.1, 1.2, et cetera, et cetera. So the gist of an MVP is really the simplest version of your experience of what you're creating and getting it into the hands of the users as quickly as possible.
Right. So here's a question we haven't talked about. What's the fastest you've ever delivered an MVP for one of your clients?
You could build an MVP in a day, for real. You could do an MVP in a couple hours, I suppose, because it could be as simple as a landing page. You know, if you have an existing website, for example, and you have an idea for a new offering, technically an MVP of that offering could be a new landing page, and you could whip that up really quickly. So I'll say that the quickest we've ever done was under a day, but the longest, way longer. They can definitely be long projects. The first question you asked, we really talked about getting the MVP into the hands of the users as quickly as possible. So our talk track is really always to move quickly. You want to move quickly to get your MVP out, get it in front of people as quickly as possible. But we've worked on MVP projects that were months long and up to almost a year long. If you're creating a really complex piece of software, even an MVP could be pretty complex. But again, getting it in front of the users as quickly as possible, that's the name of the game.
Yeah, there's a book that we've used a lot called the Startup Owner's Manual. And they've described that you could build an MVP like on a couple of pieces of cardboard, and you show one screen, you show the next screen, you show the next screen, you say, would you use this? And if they say yes, well, that's a really good start, right? If they say no, you're like, well, why not? Right. And so you can really iterate quite quickly if you do things that way.
Yeah, something like that, you nailed it. It's about iterating, where if you can get feedback from a real user, or even if you have a control group, a focus group, where maybe it's people that you know, it's trusted partners or clients or even employees. You can have your own group looking at something that you're creating, but getting that feedback in real time, and then to your point, iterating, coming out with improving the location of content, maybe the size of a call to action. There could be so many little tweaks that could be made on a small scale that can really help take that MVP to the next level.
Right. And other considerations would include, hey, can we have a basic logo? Hey, what color palette should we use? How do we, and you might have a different color palette if you're B2B versus B2C, or if it's based on the category. Is it a pet category? Is it an environmental category? You might have different color palettes, different logo treatments, different fonts, different typeface selections based on what the goal is, who the end user might be.
Yeah, you're really talking about the user experience now, the look and feel of it, and MVPs can really do that. You know, it could look like the real deal to the user. They may never even know that they're dealing with an MVP. They may not even know what that means. They shouldn't have to. The point of it is for them to really interact with you and engage with you on your experience. So to your point, you could absolutely do that. You can create an MVP with a very refined look and feel. On the other side of that, though, you can create an MVP with a very simple, skinny interface, maybe no interface. If you're creating a form, for example, the form could have very little design to it. So I think the MVP really, there's a range here, right? You can go to market with an MVP, the very first version, and it could be super simple, or you can make it super refined. And to the end user, to my point earlier, they wouldn't even know that they're dealing with an MVP.
Right. And so, what are some of the, key elements that you like to see when a client comes to you with a desire for an MVP? Are you asking them for market research ahead of time? Are you asking them for, obviously you should have a name for your company of some variety, even if it's just a first run name. You should have a name of some sort, right?
Certainly.
What else is sort of a minimum, requirement for a minimum viable product?
Good question. It really depends. And we've seen it all. Some of our customers come to us, they know what an MVP is. They know what their feature set's going to be. They have a whole project plan. They need someone to help execute. And there are other customers that come to us where they don't even know what an MVP is. So there needs to be some education there. And if that's the case, then it becomes a conversation about prioritization, because you may want your site or your app to do these 10 things. But for an MVP, it doesn't make sense to do those 10 things. It would maybe make more sense to do 4 things, but to do them really well. That's the purpose of that MVP. And our conversation at the beginning of that type of project is a lot different than if it's a customer who really knows about an MVP and has all the requirements. So first and foremost, I think that's the focus, is prioritizing features, what's really important here and what gets cut. Because frankly, not everything can get out in an MVP.
Right.
But then also really thinking about, the audience. We talked about potentially putting an MVP just in front of internal groups like focus groups. But if this is really going to market, if you're really going to show the MVP to the public, then you really want to think about who your audience is and being able to create an interface that makes sense to that audience. You made a comment about the logo, the look and feel, and I think that definitely pertains to the audience research. Creating something that makes sense and will hit home.
Yeah. I think we should talk about red flags, sort of that if you're coming to a partner like a KnockMedia or anyone that's in our world of building stuff, there's a few red flags, and I'll just mention one, which is, I want to make money off my MVP. That's a huge red flag for me. If someone comes to me and says, I'm going to introduce my first, offering into the marketplace, and I'm also going to make money on it, that's going to fund, my future development. They're not building an MVP. They're building, they're sort of, sort of Frankensteining, right? You're trying to
Yeah, I
get
think
much out of this
two
product.
things there. If you're gonna, I think you can make an MVP that can be commercialized and you can make money. Where it gets sticky is if you're going to use that for funding for future development, or if you're relying on that. This is an MVP, right? This is an experiment. You're testing the hypotheses,
Exactly.
right? To a degree, there's some science here, I would hope.
Yeah.
But the funding portion of it, I think, has to be part of the broader plan. And the MVP, going back to our really first point, is you're iterating, you're moving quickly, you're agile in your thinking. And to create an MVP is to really think like that, is to be able to move and to be nimble, to create something that can really, you can iterate. The next version, remember, 1.1, 1.2, you can always make changes and updates and make something better.
Yeah, there's, one of the things that, you really want to be thinking about is your MVP allows you to test your business model and your hypothesis. Your business plan, your notion of what you're going to serve should be a little broader than just, this MVP is going to tell me everything I need to know. You should, I think ideally you've got advisors, you've got more than yourself, you've got a few people who really care about what the business is going to do, and getting them on board, getting them satisfied, that the MVP helps you progress towards a goal, that the MVP just isn't the goal, right? You need a little bit of maturity. You need a little bit of common sense that says, yeah, I'm building a piece of software. is going to tell me something. It is not the only thing I'm doing.
Nicely put. The MVP is part of the whole operation. It's not the whole operation. You're exactly right. It's an important piece, but it is just that. It's a piece, and there's got to be a strategy around that piece.
Excellent. Well, you and I love to talk about these sorts of things because we love software. So, you know, we could probably talk about it all day, but I think we've pretty much run out of time. Is there one last insight you want to give to someone who's thinking about building an MVP towards some sort of new business?
I would say, just reiterating one point, is it's about prioritization. What we see a lot is wanting to be everything to everybody. And in the spirit of an MVP, it's to really narrow down your focus, to really think about what you're doing. And remember, you don't have to do 10 features, do 4, but do them really good. That should be the premise of the MVP.
Excellent. Nate, thanks so much for your time today. We'll talk to you soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Peter.